one thing that I'm curious about, because in the industry, when it comes to career growth, I often hear two methodologies. One is where people, they focus on the promo first and foremost. And as a byproduct to get the promo, they, grow in level or skills and various other things, behaviors. And in the other school of thought, it's ignore the promos, but focus on the behaviors, focus on the skills, and then the promos will come. I'm curious your thought between the two methodologies and which one you think is better for structuring an engineering career.
I have pretty strong opinions about this. I am very much of the mind that it is important to focus on impact and not the title. And I think there are a number of reasons for this. But that is certainly what I look for now that I'm in a situation when I'm helping people with their careers, and I am often in the position of, figuring out, who's the right person to advance. And what I am looking for is I am looking for the impact. And my general philosophy is that if you are having that level of impact, you don't need to sell yourself in that way. Or sell yourself is not quite the right word, but there is a particular philosophy where you want to promo hack, right? You want to pin your management chain down on what are the things that I need to do to receive this promotion. And that, just speaking frankly, is very annoying, right? There are aspects to this that I think are just intuitive to how I, at least as a person, perceive things. Like I'm a father of kids, and when my daughter asks me, like, when I ask her to do something and she's like, will you give me this if I do that, right? It just does not land well with me. But I think that there's also a substantive aspect to it, which is that if you're really focused on the impact, that is how you are really going to achieve things, right? Whereas if you're focused on checking some boxes that somebody has presented to you, then you're in this awkward situation where it's like, well, I did technically say that if you did this, that would maybe make a case for this next level. But the way in which you did it and was very sort of focused on checking the box as opposed to having the impact. And at the end of the day, impact is what matters, and impact is what needs to be recognized and rewarded.
One thing that I hear often, because I think this is a failure mode for engineers that are a little more soft-spoken, is they're great at writing code and landing it and having impact, but they're a little weaker on the, selling yourself or kind of marketing your work. And so that kind of bites people. And so sometimes I hear career advice that is focused on, hey, make sure you create a brag document and you share the wins when you land the thing. And I think a lot of those people don't have an ulterior motive of, let me, kind of connive my way into the promo. But I think there is this real thing of promos are decided by people, and there's some value in, I guess, a balance. Because obviously if you were completely conniving, you say, hey, I'm going to talk to my manager and sell my work to him, that's kind of not ideal. But, making posts or sharing it and thinking about the levels and stuff seems to be a good way for those little quieter or less proactive engineers in structuring their careers. So, how would you kind of balance those two frames of thinking?
I think there are often multiple ways to frame similar activities, but that the framing of how you think about it is going to have a big impact on how you carry it out and therefore what it actually achieves. And so I think a good example of this is this notion of, that you brought up, selling yourself or brag documents or something like that. I think it is important that people have visibility and visibility around the work that they're doing. And this is just a basic fact about impact. Because if you want to have impact, you need to be connected to people who understand what are the biggest challenges, and you need to be coordinated. And you also need to make sure that people understand what you are capable of, such that they can put you in a position of having more impact. But if you think of it as, I am trying to brag more about me versus I am trying to communicate and coordinate and create visibility for work that I think that is important, you will have very different outcomes.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's subtle. I feel like you could have two people with different incentive. One goes into it saying, I'm going to create this update so I get visibility. And the other person comes in to say, I'm going to create this update so the right people know the right things. And they get to the same path at the end of the day. But it's like this subtle.
It's worded slightly differently, and people can tell. A lot of it is the degree to which, how much you make it about you versus how much you make it about other people and the work and the team. And everybody knows, that the person sending the update likely had a significant hand in the work. And a very important thing to do as part of those updates is to make sure that you give visibility to other people and to thank the team and not make it so much about you. Because also that is a way to work well with people, to have people feel like you are a, humble leader and somebody that they want to work with. And that is an important part of leadership, is making sure that you create recognition for other people's contributions, and don't make it all about you.
It is an ideal world that people have impact and they get recognized exactly as much as their impact. One thing that I can imagine happening, though, is, there's that idiom that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Basically, if you had a loud person that is really vying for their promo and, aggressively trying to make the posts and, constantly bothering their manager, hey, I want to get promoted, that oftentimes, assuming they have impact too. If they don't have impact, then nothing's gonna happen. But assuming if they're also a high performer and they're doing that, compared to the high performer that's, reasonable, quiet, and solid, not selfish, that actually that loud person, unfortunately, I think in most organizations will get rewarded first or faster. What do you think about that?
I think it does depend on the organization, and it depends on the technical culture. One of the things that we try really hard to do in our culture is to not reward that. But I think there is a balance to be struck, because my message is not don't be ambitious, but rather think about your ambition in terms of the impact that you want to have as opposed to the status you want to achieve. And if you have the impact and create visibility around the impact, the rest will follow. And yes, there are edge cases, and there are probably some situations where people lobbying for themselves will kind of grudgingly get themselves a little more consideration just because it's top of mind. But the best kinds of conversations that I like to have with people are not conversations where people come and ask, how do I get promoted? It is, how do I grow my career and have more impact, right? Like, am I working on the most important thing? Like, what could I do to grow? What could I do to have more impact, right? And I think that those are important conversations to have with your leadership, to make sure that you're focused on the right things. Because the worst and saddest thing is when somebody is just working so hard at something that is just not that important and not going to have the type of impact that they ultimately want to do. And they might do a great job at it, but it's just not the right thing. And so I do think that some coordination of like, this is the type of impact that I want to have, and not everybody wants to have that kind of impact, and making it known that you want to have that impact and you're looking for swings at the bat and you're looking for opportunities to do more, I think that that is helpful. But trying to pin people down of like, what are the boxes that I can check? And, I did this, like, are you going to promote me now? Is just honestly extremely annoying from my perspective. And I just think zooming out at a level of life, you don't want the people in leadership to find you to be annoying.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. If you thought it was interesting, it's from a longer conversation that's available right here, right now. And if you have any feedback for me, feel free to drop a comment on YouTube. I read every single comment that I get.